Look at wind energy since 1998, in the last 16 years, the best way to describe it is it's a rocket launch after a very slow countdown. We counted down for more than a decade, but when it took off, it certainly took off.
Climate reality leader Johan was a lawyer who became Africa's greatest wind energy champion. In 10 years, the country has become Africa's largest wind power producer, and he has helped craft this exciting development.
So the Darling Wind Farm was the first attempt to do this in South Africa. I became involved in about 2003 when there were various stumbling blocks, but ultimately those were overcome. The wind farm was opened up in 2008.
This country of 50 million people has created one of the fastest and most high-tech wind energy revolutions in the world. But these winds of change are now blowing up against one of humanity's oldest power sources, coal.
As we speak today, South Africa still generates probably 92% of its electricity from coal. We have a lot of coal, so there's a natural incentive to use it, but that doesn't mean that we have to.
South Africa has a coal addiction. The United States Energy Information Service says it's number 11 in the world for total carbon dioxide output from energy use. Vast open-cast coal mines like this one pollute communities and make global warming worse. Near Johannesburg, old 20th century coal-fired power stations like these release 461 million metric tons of climate-changing carbon dioxide every year. But now King Coal has a powerful, fast, and game-changing challenger.
Every kilowatt hour of wind power generated will offset the emissions of 1 kilowatt hour of coal that would have been there had the wind not generated.
So every bit of wind energy counts in lowering carbon emissions. Because of new advances in technology shared from places like Germany, Berg says that the cost of developing new coal power in South Africa is now double the cost of wind.
At the moment, you have the situation where new coal power costs very nearly twice what new wind power will cost you. The South African government at Copenhagen committed that 42% of our new electricity would come from renewable sources in the time leading up to 2030. And that equated to about 20,000 megawatts of wind and solar power installed by 2030, and we're firmly on track to reach that. My own belief is that we will easily exceed that.
In 2010, the government said they would need outside funding to meet these goals. But the cost of wind power is so competitive now that the economics are driving even the coal mines to get into the wind business. Exxaro, the second largest coal producer in the country, has just invested $300 million to create one of the biggest wind farms here. When energy companies look beyond coal for new investment, it's a sign that the technology is not just good for the climate, but good for the bottom line, explains climate reality leader Evan Rice.
And that really is the true success story here, is what we're seeing is not only is this a technology that's producing much cleaner power, but it's doing so at lower cost than traditional fossil fuel technologies.
At the government's South Africa National Energy Development Institute, Andrew Otto and his team published the first wind atlas, helping the government to understand the power of the wind resource for them to be able to drive investment towards it.
So the first thing, to develop a wind industry, you need to know how much wind, and you need to have at least some standard verification wind. And that is one of the big issues we struggle for some time. And that's why we developed the wind atlas.
Once the government developed the wind atlas and opened it up for everyone to see, it was clear that South Africa has excellent wind resources. And since then, investors have come knocking.
We're seeing these global leading companies starting to set up shop and manufacture components locally. And that's been designed in by the government's program by demanding increasing local content.
Jama is the community trust developer for the COOKHOUSE wind farm. It's the biggest of its kind in Africa, with 66 turbines producing enough energy to power 140,000 South African homes.
We created about 375 jobs during construction for the local people. I'm not talking about the guys that came, with the contractors and the subcontractors. 375 just for the locals.
For a country struggling with 25% unemployment, jobs here are vital. But it is not only direct jobs like maintaining the wind turbines that will benefit this town. The community also owns part of the wind farm through an elected trust.
We should be seeing an improvement in those communities within the next, say, 5 to 10 years. We should be seeing a different community than it was before. And that is the main aim of the project. We'll want you in 10 years' time to look back and say, wow, thank you to the Cookhouse Wind Farm.
The South African government's investment process requires that investors here uplift the local communities where they operate by sharing a proportion of the profits that they generate from the electricity.
Up to 40% of the equity shareholding is held by a community or a community trust.
The Cookhouse Wind Farm supports projects like this old age home and development center. Here, the older women of the town have a safe place to cook, sew, and garden. In nearby Somerset East, life has been hard for many unemployed people. The government's Marie Coetzee foster care home helps give abandoned and orphaned children a normal life here. Liandria Gardner explains how the added money from the wind farm has made a huge difference.
The money that the wind farm donated to the Marie Coetzee foster cluster home, it brought many changes into those children's lives.
She says that the other major windfall of the project is that it stops children from ending up in her care because it's bringing jobs to the local community.
They create jobs for our youth in the communities.
Even security concerns are being addressed by renewables.
And some of the examples that you can already see about this community upliftment is already installed solar street lights for the community where they're going to build the wind farm because there was a security issue and they thought it would change people's lives by doing that.
Job creation is vital to South Africa. Evan Rice is the CEO of the government's GREENCAPE project and a big fan of wind power.
You know, I think the most exciting part of building this renewable industry in the country is that it's going to create a whole lot of jobs, a whole lot of clean jobs, and creates opportunities for companies that are currently operating in one market to switch to being much more sustainable.
GREENCAPE is training and developing the next generation of green energy engineers here in Cape Town through technology transfer from countries like Germany. 3 years ago, the city of Cape Town and the national government partnered with Germany to create the South African Renewable Energy Technology Center. This cutting-edge technology center will produce qualified technicians to run and maintain the complex wind turbines.
Someone who is trained in South Africa would be able to work worldwide and would meet the standards of the worldwide needs and requirements of the renewable energies, particularly the wind turbine technology, which is a very complicated technology and requires a high set of skills.
His colleague, also from Germany, has already built successful training centers in both Germany and China.
I feel this is a part of that what we can do for this world, to make it more greener. Show the South Africans you don't need so much coal. We have also renewable energy, and I think the wind energy is part of this. It's a big part of this.
Employment is one of the most critical things facing South Africa at the moment. We've got very high rates of unemployment, and we're seeing that renewable energy and other opportunities in the green economy are creating new opportunities for our people.
The center will train thousands of engineers like these to service the renewable energy market. This is a groundbreaking new factory to produce 120 wind towers per year, built by South Africans to service the growing demand for high-tech wind energy systems in the country.
We are bringing in a massive project which will create jobs. We want to contribute to climate change reduction.
It's also a testament to the government's long-term commitment to fight climate change and develop along a greener path.
Which will add value to the whole issue of the green economy, will bring changes to the whole issue of the climate change.
Berg is optimistic.
So I think we're at a historical watershed. I'm not sure if it's 5 years or 10 years, but it'll change. I think the biggest satisfaction when one gets to one of these wind farms is to realize that even though there can be a slow beginning and things can take a while to gather pace, finally it does happen. And when it happens far quicker than you actually thought it would. It makes me feel tremendously thankful and joyous.